what you're proposing, or what the president's proposing here, does not sound like it's in keeping with American tradition when it comes to immigration. The Statue of Liberty says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free." Doesn't say anything about speaking English or being able to be a computer programmer. Aren't you trying to change what it means to be an immigrant coming into this country? If you're telling them you have to speak English, can't people learn how to speak English when they get here?
Well, first of all, right now, it's a requirement that to be naturalized, you had to speak English. So the notion that speaking English wouldn't be a part of our immigration systems would be actually very ahistorical. Secondly, I don't want to get off into a whole thing about history here, but the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of liberty enlightening the world. It's a symbol of American liberty lighting the world. The poem that you're referring to that was added later is not actually part of the original Statue of Liberty, but more fundamentally, the history, but more fundamentally,
you're saying
the
that
history.
That does not represent.
I'm saying that.
What
I'm
the
saying that
country
the
has always
notion.
thought of
I'm
as
saying the notion that the.
immigration coming into this
I'm saying the
country.
notion.
Stephen, I'm sorry.
No,
that sounds
Jim,
like,
let me ask you a question.
That sounds like some national park revisionism.
No,
The
what I'm asking you
the
is.
Statue of Liberty
Jim,
has always
Jim,
been
let me
a
ask you a
beacon
question.
of hope to the world,
Jim,
for people to send
Jim, do you
their
believe-
people to this country,
Jim,
and they're not always going to speak
Jim,
English, Stephen.
Jim,
they're not
do you
always
believe-
going to be highly skilled. They're not always
Jim,
going to be
Jim,
somebody
Jim,
who-
I appreciate your
Silicon Valley.
speech. Jim, I appreciate your speech. So let's talk about this.
It was a modest
Jim, let's
Negro
talk about
speech.
this. In 1970, when we let in 300,000 people a year, was that violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land? In the 1990s, when it was 500,000 a year, was it violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land?
Was it violating?
When it was
was
700,000 a year.
violating the Statue of
No,
Liberty
tell me what
and
years.
the fields
Tell
of
me
the
what
Statue of
years.
Liberty when the
Tell me
president
what
called for
years
deportation?
meet. Tell me what years meet Jim Acosta's definition of the Statue of Liberty poem law of the land. So you're saying 1 million a year is the Statue of Liberty number. 900,000 violates it. 800,000 violates it.
You're sort of bringing a
Jim.
press one for English philosophy here to
Jim.
immigration, and that's never
For
been
Jim.
what the United States has been about, Stephen.
That
I mean,
you're,
it's
but
just
you're
crazy.
also your statement's also shockingly ahistorical in another respect too, which is if you look at the history of immigration, it's actually ebbed and flowed. We've had periods of very large waves, followed by periods of less immigration and more immigration, and during the
We're in a
we've had
period of immigration right now. The
Yeah,
president wants to build
it's
a wall.
actually-
You want
it's
to
actually-
bring about a sweeping change to the
surely,
immigration
Jim, you
system.
don't actually think that a wall affects green card policy. You couldn't possibly believe that, do you? Actually, the notion that you actually think immigration is at a historic law, the foreign-born population in the United
President
States
was
today,
just with the
Jim,
new chief of
Jim,
staff on Monday talking about how border crossings.
do you
were
really,
way
I
out.
want to be serious, Jim, do you really at CNN not know the difference between green card policy and illegal immigration?
Sir,
I mean, you
my
really
father
don't know
is a
that?
Cuban immigrant. He came to this country in 1962, right before the Cuban Missile Crisis, and obtained a green card. Yes, people who immigrate
Okay,
to this
so
country
Jim-
can eventually. People who
So Jim,
immigrate
it's a
to this
factual
country
question,
through,
Jim.
not through Ellis
Jim,
Island,
as a
your
factual-
family
Jim,
may
as a
have,
factual
but in
question-
other ways, do obtain a green card at some point. They do it through a lot of hard work. And yes, they may learn English as a second language later on in life.
So, but
this
Jim-
whole notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
Jim, as actually, I have to honestly say, I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English. It's actually, it reveals your cosmopolitan bias to a shocking degree that in your mind, no, this is an amazing moment. This is an amazing moment that you think only people from Great Britain or Australia would speak English is so insulting to millions of hardworking immigrants who do speak English from all over the world. Jim, have you honestly never met an immigrant from another country who speaks English outside of Great Britain and Australia? Is that your personal experience?
Of course, there are people who come.
But that's not what you said, and
it
it shows your cosmopolitan bias. And I just want to say,
sounds like you're trying to engineer the
I just wanna
racial
say-
and ethnic flow of people into this country.
Jim, that is one of the most outrageous, insulting, ignorant, and foolish things you've ever said. And for you, that's still a really the notion that you think that this is a racist bill is so wrong and so insulting. Jim, the reality is that the foreign-born population into our country has quadrupled since 1970. That's a fact. It's been mostly driven by green card policy. Now, this bill allows for immediate nuclear family members to come into the country, much as they would today, and then it adds an additional points-based system. The people who've been hurt the
You're
most,
saying that people have to be
the
English
people who've
speaking
been,
or naturalized. What
the
is this
people who've been,
English
the people who've
speaking
been,
component
the
that
people who've been
conservative
hurt the
members
most
understand?
by the policy you're advocating are
What policy am I advocating?
apparently just unfettered, uncontrolled migration. The people who've been hurt the most by the
Anybody who
policy.
questions what you're doing is for
The people who've been
open
hurt the
doors.
most by the
That's
policy
same
that you're.
kind of thing that-
The people who've been hurt the most by the policy you're advocating are immigrant workers and minority workers and African American workers and Hispanic
Are you
workers.
targeting
And it
the
has no-
African American community now? You brought it up again. You said you wanted to have a conversation and not target. Is it going to be a target?
This is
now?
what we wanna
If
do.
you're using the African American community, are you going to target? I'm not trying to be funny. but
Right,
you
and
keep
I know what you're
this.
saying. What you're saying is 100% correct.
Thank you.
We want to help unemployed African Americans in this country and unemployed workers of all backgrounds get jobs. And insinuations like Jim made, trying to ascribe nefarious motives to a compassion immigration measure designed to help newcomers and current arrivals alike, is wrong. And this is a positive, optimistic proposal that says 10 years, 20 years, 30
So I
years
call
from
you
now,
ignorant. You called me ignorant on
10
national
years,
television.
20 years, 30 years from now,
Honestly, that's just
we
a
want to
mistake.
have an immigration system that takes care of the people who are coming here and the people who are already living here by having standards, by having a real clear requirement that you be able to support yourself financially, by making sure that employers can pay a living wage. That's the right policy for our country, and it's the president's commitment to taking care of American workers. I apologize, Jim, if things got heated, but you did make some pretty rough insinuations. So thank you,
I don't know what
thank
you mean
you,
by rough insinuations.
thank you, and I'll hand it over to Sarah.